Please join us in welcoming Dr. Kaku to the stage.
Well, after such a great introduction, I can't wait to hear the speaker myself. First of all, I have a confession to make. Having all these accolades thrown at you can sometimes backfire. Recently, New York Magazine voted me as one of the 100 smartest people in New York. I thought, wow, what an honor. However, in all fairness, I have to admit that Madonna also made that same list. And next year, I understand that Lady Gaga is going to push me off the list entirely. Now today, I'm going to talk about the future. It's very dangerous talking about the future. Let me quote from that great philosopher of the Western world, Yogi Berra. It was Yogi Berra who once said, quote, "Prediction is awfully hard to do, especially if it's about the future." Well, I'm a physicist. We can predict the evolution of the universe billions of years from now. So let me quote now from that other great philosopher, Woody Allen. Woody Allen once said, quote, "Eternity is an awful long time, especially toward the end." Well, I'm a quantum physicist. And some people say, well, what does quantum physics, what has it done for me lately? What's in it for numero uno? Well, we quantum physicists invented the laser. We invented the transistor. Most of the world's economy depends upon these two discoveries from quantum physics. We also assembled the first computers and the internet. We wrote the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web was written by a physicist to keep track of subatomic particles. You can thank the Higgs boson for the World Wide Web. And along the way, we also invented television. We invented radio. We invented radar, microwaves. And in the hospital, we invented the MRI scan, X-ray machines, EEG scans. And by the way, don't forget, we also helped to create the space program and also the GPS satellites orbiting in outer space. In other words, we quantum physicists invented most of the 20th century. And we love to make predictions. When we assembled the internet for the first time, one physicist predicted that the internet would become a forum of high culture, high art, and high society. Well, today we know that 5% of the internet is pornography. But that's because teenage boys log on to the internet. Just wait until the grandmas and grandpas log on to the internet. Then 50% of the internet will be pornography. Now, I've had the privilege of interviewing over 300 of the world's top scientists for the Discovery Channel, BBC Television, and the Science Channel. However, you have to be cautious predicting the future. Let me now go back 200 years and tell you a story of what happened during the French Revolution. One day, there were three gentlemen about to have their heads cut off at the guillotine. There was a priest, a lawyer, and a theoretical physicist, just like me, about to have our heads lopped off. Well, they put the priest's head on the chopping block, and they asked him, "Do you have any last words before we slice your head off?" And the priest said, "Yes." He said, God from above shall certainly set me free." Well, all eyes were on the blade. They raised the blade. The blade came down, swoosh, and stopped right before it hit the neck of the priest. Well, the mob had never seen this before, And so the mob said, let the priest go, because today God has spoken. And now let's see about the lawyer. Yes, the lawyer. They put the lawyer's head on the chopping block. And they asked him, do you have any last words? And he said, maybe the spirit of justice. Yes, justice shall set me free. Well, all eyes were on the blade. They raised the blade. The blade came down, swish, and stopped right before it hit the neck of the lawyer. Well, this time the mob went crazy, dancing in the streets of Paris. People were saying that today God has spoken. Justice and mercy have spoken. And now let's see about that theoretical physicist. Well, they put the physicist's head on the chopping block. And they asked him, do you have any last words? And he said, yeah, I got some last words. And he said, I don't know too much about God. And I know even less about the law. But I do know one thing. If you look up, you'll see that the rope is stuck on the pulley. And then he said, if you remove the rope, the blade should come down real good. Big mistake. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Well, the rope came down, the blade came down, and the poor physicist's head came down. And the moral of the story is, sometimes we physicists have to know when to keep our mouths shut. Nonetheless, let me now open the mouths of 300 of the world's top scientists who are inventing the future even as we speak. The last slide showed Physics of the Future, my latest New York Times bestseller. My previous book is also a New York Times bestseller, and they tell me that this is the first time in world history that the word physics ever entered the New York Times bestseller list. This book even goes 500 years into the future, when we might have starships, teleportation, antimatter, maybe even time travel. And in the physics of the impossible, I answer the question, what happens if you go into a time machine and you meet your teenage mother before you're born and she falls in love with you? Well, if your teenage mother falls in love with you before you're born, you're in deep doo-doo if that happens. What can I say? But at this point, you may be saying to yourself, I don't believe anybody can predict the future. You guys can't even predict the past. Nobody predicted the crash of 2008. Well, that's not quite true. First of all, where does wealth come from anyway? Yes, it comes from good government, it comes from leadership, workers, it comes from entrepreneurs. But ultimately, science is the engine of wealth and prosperity. But you see, science is not even. Science comes in waves. One invention, like the steam engine, creates an avalanche of secondary inventions, which creates wealth. Fantastic wealth. But wealth is restless. Wealth has to go someplace, and it often goes to create a bubble. And when the bubble pops, you get a depression. So let's talk about 1800. And then we're going to rocket into the future. In 1800, we physicists worked out the thermodynamics of heat engines. We helped to create the steam engine. We could calculate how much energy you could get from a lump of coal to energize a locomotive. That set into motion the Industrial Revolution. All of a sudden, we had textile factories, locomotives. We had railroad companies, wealth, tremendous wealth that a feudal society had never seen before. But wealth is restless. Wealth has to go someplace. And the wealth went into the London Stock Exchange, creating a bubble that had never been seen before. 200 railroad stocks registered on the London Stock Exchange. Well, it was unsustainable. And the bubble popped in 1850. In fact, the popping of the bubble was so severe, with so many shock waves, that it actually gave birth to a philosophy. And that philosophy is called Marxism. 80 years later, we physicists unleashed the next wave of innovation: electricity, magnetism, the internal combustion engine. And that created another huge wave of wealth in the form of utility stocks, automobile stocks, and it created a huge bubble on the American stock exchange in precisely these two disciplines. It was unsustainable, and it popped in 1929. But 80 years later, we physicists, right on the dot, initiated the third wave of innovation. Lasers, computers, the space program, GPS, high technology, the internet, even larger wave of wealth generation, and it created a bubble. In America, that bubble went into real estate, and it popped in 2008. And in Europe, all that excess wealth went into maintaining the Mediterranean lifestyle. Well, the Mediterranean lifestyle is also unsustainable, and it is popping perhaps this year. So here's the question for today. If we physicists unleashed the power of steam, and then the power of electricity and magnetism, and then the power of lasers and computers, what is the fourth wave? What is the fourth wave which will generate wealth, fantastic wealth on a scale that we've never seen before? We physicists believe that it will be a combination of molecular science, biotechnology, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence. So let's now talk about the fourth wave of wealth generation. First of all, this is Moore's Law. It is perhaps the most important law in modern history. The wealth of nations often depends upon this simple curve. This simple curve shows that computer power doubles every 18 months, and on a log chart, it's a straight line. Look now, for example, at 1945. Today, when you get a birthday card in the mail, you open it up, and it sings, "Happy birthday to you." There's a chip in that birthday card. That chip has more computer power than all the Allied forces of 1945. Stalin, Hitler, Roosevelt, Churchill would have killed to get that chip that you get in a birthday card that you just throw away in the garbage. And in fact, if Hitler had that chip in 1940, we might all be speaking German here today rather than English. And now look at 1969. In 1969, we put 2 men on the moon. But have you ever seen these old NASA videotapes of the moon program? My God, they were using 64K processors back in 1969. You realize that your cell phone today has more computer power than all of NASA in 1969? In fact, you're not going to put me in one of those moon rockets. It's criminal. We were sending humans into outer space backed up by a cell phone. That's criminal. But that's what we did back in 1969. And now, look at 2020. And you now know the future. According to this chart, in 2020, we now know that computer chips will cost about a penny or so. That's the cost of scrap paper. Bubblegum wrappers cost a penny. And computers will go the way of electricity. Today, electricity is everywhere and nowhere. When you walk into a room, what's the first thing you do? You look for the light switch. You assume that the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everything is electrified and out of sight. In fact, the word electricity has pretty much disappeared from the English language. Nobody says the word electricity anymore. And where does electricity come from anyway? You know, who knows where electricity comes from? The clouds someplace. Well, you now know the future of the computer. The future of the computer is to disappear, to be everywhere and nowhere, until the word computer disappears from the English language. And where will computer power come from? the cloud. Computer power will be everywhere and nowhere, including the internet. The internet will be everywhere because chips will cost a penny. In fact, the internet will be everywhere, including your glasses. These glasses are actually even more powerful than the Google glasses. These glasses recognize people's faces. When you see somebody in the future, you'll see a biography next to their image. And if they speak Chinese to you, it'll translate Chinese into English with subtitles. How many times have you been at a conference like this and you bump into somebody and you say, I know this person. It's Jim, John, Jake. I know this person. Who is this person? In the future, your glasses will say, it's Jim, stupid. You saw him last conference. How many times do I have to remind you? And let's say you're looking for a job. And you're at a cocktail party, and you know there's some very heavy hitters at that cocktail party, but you don't know who they are. In the future, you will know exactly who to suck up to at any cocktail party. But maybe you don't want to look like a refugee from Star Trek. Children are at the vanguard of this technology. It used to be the Pentagon. Now it's the Pentagon and children. Video games make more money than all of Hollywood movies put together. And kids love this stuff. We're too old to appreciate it, but kids just love this technology. 3 ways to do it. You can shoot the image right to the retina of your eye, giving you a perfect image to the retina of the eye. You can use the glass as a screen, like what Google does, or you can have an eyepiece, which is what the military does. And in fact, fashion models will eventually wear this. It'll be fashionable. The in crowd will have all the knowledge they want anytime they want. This could be the future of your home office, the future of your home entertainment center. But there's a problem. There's a big problem. Maybe you don't wear glasses. Maybe you don't like glasses. Then what are you going to do? Then in the future, we will blink and go online. And who's the first people to buy internet contact lenses? College students taking final examinations. They will blink and see all the periodic chart, all the elements, all the amino acids, all the parts of the body, boom, right there in their contact lens. Who's the second person to buy these internet contact lenses? President Barack Obama, so he doesn't have to have these damn teleprompters anymore. And who's the third person to buy these internet contact lenses? Vice President Joe Biden, so that he's always on message and always says the right things. Who else will buy these internet contact lenses? Mom and dad on a tourist junket. They'll be able to bargain with the merchants in the bazaar. They'll see subtitles as you bargain in Arabic, Greek, or whatever with the people in the bazaar. And then when you walk through the ruins of Rome, there's nothing left of the Roman Empire anymore. However, you'll see the entire Roman Empire resurrected right in your contact lens as you walk through the ruins of Rome. And you have to realize that you can connect these contact lenses together so you can see what the other person is seeing. And who will buy these? Husbands and wives. Let's say the husband or the wife always gets it wrong doing the grocery shopping. Next time your husband goes out and buys the wrong apple, the wrong pears, the wrong peaches, you'll see that in your contact lens. And you'll say to hubby, no, not that pear. No, that orange is rotten. No. Very important, because you'll be able to see what's happening. Bosses will see exactly what's happening around the world with their factories as the workers walk through the factories. Bosses will be able to see their workers squirm and sweat as they have these tours going on. Now, this is called augmented reality. Virtual reality is for children. That's when you put on glasses and see a cartoon. Augmented reality is when you see reality with information imposed upon it. Now, you've seen this before. There's a Hollywood movie which first introduced augmented reality to the people of the world. What was that Hollywood movie? Here is the former governor of California in a very bad mood. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when the Terminator robot sees a victim, he sees a biography right next to the name. Now, you may say to yourself, well, all this is great, but this is science fiction, right? Wrong. It already exists. In fact, it's operational. And who's at the vanguard of this? Once again, it is the United States Pentagon. The Pentagon has created Land Warrior. Land Warrior is about half an inch long. You put it on your helmet, you flick it right over your eyepiece, and boom, you're online. The Science Channel flew me down to Fort Benning, Georgia. In fact, that's my old alma mater. I graduated from Fort Benning, Georgia during the Vietnam War. I put on this helmet, and when I put on the helmet and I put the eyepiece right over my eye, boom, I saw the internet of the battlefield. Enemy forces, friendly forces, artillery, armor, aircraft, right there in your contact lens. Who else is interested in this? The Air Force. Because if you're a jet fighter pilot and the enemy jet flies underneath your jet, you are dead meat. You can't see the enemy. The Air Force wants to put a TV camera underneath the jet to shoot the image into their contact lens. So when the pilot looks down through his feet, he will have X-ray vision. This is what Superman has in the comic books, and this is what workers will have. Workers doing work in a subway tube will see right through walls because there's a camera on the other side of the wall shooting the image right into their eyes. And NASA is interested in this. When astronauts have to make repairs on the space station, they have to go to their back pocket to get the map out, the blueprint, right? Nope. They'll see the blueprint right in their helmet, and they'll see right through the hull because they will have X-ray vision. So who will want this? Everybody. We will live in a world of augmented reality. This means that as we go by, more and more parts of our life are going to be digitalized. And this is one of the themes of my talk, the digitalization of our life, capitalism itself, and of course, the necessity of big data. This is the future of money. Very soon, cash, as we know it, will become largely obsolete. You will buy things with your cell phone. You will point and click, point and click. That's how you will buy these things. In fact, in Japan and in Europe, at select stores, you can already do this. You can already buy things by simply pointing and clicking. And what about your cell phone? The cell phone of today has a teeny weeny little keyboard when you text somebody. And if you have fat fingers, forget it. There's no way you can text anybody with fat fingers. So, we scientists have created smart paper, flexible paper, paper made out of plastic with computers. Each dot is a pixel driven by a transistor. E-paper. We'll be able to scroll out as much paper as you want from your cell phone, a keyboard, a screen, whatever, and fold it up and put it right back. In fact, we can make yards of the stuff. This is the future of wallpaper. Today, if your wallpaper is old, discolored, ratty, and stained, what do? You suffer, that's what you do. Today, you simply talk to the wall and ask it to change color, change shape. And this is going to revolutionize medical care. Because if it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you feel a pain in your stomach, maybe it's a heart attack, or maybe it's the pizza you had last night. So what do? You go to the wallpaper and say, mirror, mirror on the wall. I want to see a doctor right now. Boom! RoboDoc appears right in your wallpaper. RoboDoc is artificially intelligent, accesses the internet, and gives you timely medical advice on any subject with 99% accuracy. IBM is already perfecting RoboDoc, meaning that medical costs will go down. One reason among many why medical costs are so high is because poor people don't go to the doctor until it's too late. Then they rack up huge medical bills when they go to the hospital. In the future, if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you'll be able to talk to a doctor almost for free. And if you're in a car accident and you got to talk to a lawyer right now, boom, robo-lawyer appears right in your wallpaper, answering all common legal questions. Now remember, we'll still have lawyers, we'll still have doctors, but they'll be doing more specialized things, the day-to-day drudgery of talking about what to do with aspirin and what to do about your sleeping habits and how to write a will. Those things will be done by RoboDoc and RoboLawyer. And let's say you cut one of my classes one day. Boom, RoboDoc, RoboProfessor appears in your wallpaper. And so this is going to make life more efficient. It's going to make life cheaper. But big data is going to have to handle this volume of information that's going to be flooding through the internet. These are called expert systems. True artificial intelligence has been, sadly speaking, a bust. We do not have true robots. And we probably won't have true robots for many, many decades to come. But the first thing you will have is an expert system in your wallpaper. It is not truly intelligent. It cannot make decisions. It's not self-aware. But it answers common questions. And this is your living room. This is how you will relax after a hard day's work. You'll be surrounded 360 degrees by intelligent walls. And you'll be right there in the 50-yard line watching your favorite football game. You'll be right in the middle of the action. And this is also the future of your love life. If you're a college student in the US and it's Friday night and you have no date, we all know what you do. You get stone drunk. In the future, you'll go to the wall and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's available tonight?" Your wallpaper scans all the other intelligent wallpapers, finding out who else is sitting blankly at their wallpaper, wondering, what am I going to do Friday night? And the wallpaper already knows the kind of person you like and will set you up. So you go to a nice date, and then afterwards you say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, my date and I want to see an old-fashioned movie like Casablanca, except remove Humphrey Bogart's face and put my face instead. You'll be the hero of every action movie." And after I gave this talk a few years ago, an entrepreneur came up to me. And he said, "Look, I have an idea." He's already put it into motion. He wants to set up an organization of stamp collectors and coin collectors or people who just have no date that weekend. You sign up for the service. And when people walk by you, their faces light up in your glasses and your contact lens, identifying that they too want to exchange stamps with you. They too are coin collectors, or they too have nothing to do on Friday night. So in the future, when you want to pick up somebody, you just go outside. Their faces will light up as they go by you. So as I said, one by one, different aspects of life are being digitalized. For example, the toy industry. Chips are being placed in toys, making them more intelligent. This is creating problems for the English language. We have a contradiction in terms called smart Barbie dolls. Another contradiction in terms is Microsoft Works. That is also a contradiction in terms. So one by one, our way of life and even capitalism itself is being digitalized. Even television. Now, the holy grail of television has always been 3D without glasses. Who wants to put on those clunky glasses? They're sweaty, they're discolored, blue and red. Who wants to put on those clunky glasses? Well, we scientists figured it out. How to get 3D without glasses. It's called lenticular technology, and here's how we do it. The television screen of the future has thousands of vertical lines, all invisible vertical lines. Each vertical line is a prism. It cuts the image in half. One half goes to the left eye, one half goes to the right eye, and boom, 3D without glasses. This is going to revolutionize your living room. In video games now, select video games have this technology. I had a preview at one of these trade shows of a video game 3D without glasses. It's amazing. And this is your office of the future. Today, your office probably has a PC there, but why? In the future, the PC may be found only in one place, and that is the museum. These are scrap computers. They only cost a few pennies. You scribble on them and then throw them away if you want. But when you go from room to room, the scribbles follow you in the cloud. In fact, all your files follow you in the cloud. From home to car, car to office, office back to home again. All your files follow you because chips only cost a few pennies, but the files are priceless. And here is your cubicle of the future. It'll be brilliant, wraparound, flexible screens, 3 dimensions. In fact, your cubicle of the future will be so beautiful, you will never get any work done in the future. And as I said, one by one, things are being digitalized. The first industry to be digitalized was music. Remember when the music industry said, "Ha! People will always buy music the old-fashioned way." Wrong. You know who controls the music industry today? You might be surprised. Who controls the music industry today? It is Apple computers to iTunes. What's the lesson here? The lesson here is you can ignore the process of digitalization all you want. You also are perfectly free to go bankrupt. The next industry to be digitalized today, even as we speak, is publishing, media, movies. They are being digitalized right now. In fact, you probably read in the papers, about 10 years or so, the New York Times spent about $1 billion buying up the Boston Globe. Well, some people told him, don't do it. The future of print media is in doubt, but the New York Times went ahead, shelled out $1 billion to buy the Boston Globe. Well, last month, it was in all the papers. The New York Times sold the Boston Globe for about something like $100 million. They took $1 billion loss. $1 billion loss, the New York Times, because they ignored the warnings of technologists who said, don't do this, because newspapers will have to undergo the process of digitalization or they will go bankrupt. What's next? What's next? You will see revolutions in 3 coming fields: transportation, education, and medicine. And I'm going to concentrate now on the digitalization of those 3 huge sectors, starting with transportation. Notice that this car has no driver. In the year 2020, that's the target time, 2020, in your garage, you will have a car like this that drives itself using GPS. I had a chance to drive this very same car. BBC television flew me down to North Carolina, and they put me in this driverless car. So there I was in North Carolina driving this car. And then the cameraman from BBC said, "Let go of the steering wheel." And I said, "What? You nuts? I'm not going to let go of the steering wheel. You crazy?" And the cameraman said, "Trust me. Let go of the steering wheel." So I closed my eyes, I let go of the steering wheel, and the car drove itself. Let's do a science experiment after this lecture. Get in your car tonight and drive like this and see how far you get. Because that's how you will drive in 2020. That's the target time for driverless cars. In several states of the Union, the Motor Vehicles Division has already okayed the licensing of driverless cars using GPS. Also in the fenders there's radar. And of course, who pioneered this? DARPA, a branch of the Pentagon. The Pentagon also pioneered DARPANet, which we now call the Internet, pioneered the driverless car, and also the GPS system. The GPS system was not funded by the Pentagon so that mothers can track their kids. That's not why the Pentagon spent billions of dollars perfecting the GPS. No, the Pentagon gave us physicists billions of dollars to track missiles in outer space so that we could put missiles right on top of Moscow if it felt like it. That's why these technologies have become possible. And remember that humans get drunk. Humans fall asleep. Humans get distracted. Robots do not. The word traffic accident, just like the word computer, traffic jams could disappear from the English language, including road rage. And retail shopping is now being digitalized. You will not only pay for things by pointing and clicking, but you will buy things with mass customization. Let's say you're invited to a wedding and you want the most gorgeous wedding dress. Well, you find the right wedding dress, the right color, right shape, right designer, but wrong size. What happens today? No sale. In the future, you whip out your credit card. Your credit card has your three-dimensional measurements. You send it to the cloud. The cloud punches out a beautiful wedding dress, and the next day you get this gorgeous bill from the wedding manufacturer. It was Henry Ford, of course, who introduced mass production. Henry Ford was famous for the statement, quote, "The American people can have any color car they want as long as it's black." In the future, you'll have in your credit card, in the cloud, whatever, as much personalized information and choices as you want. Now, what is it building up to? Where are we going with all these fantastic technologies driven by Moore's law? We're headed for something called perfect capitalism. Now, what is capitalism? It's private ownership of the means of production, and prices are set by supply and demand. But think about it. Prices are set by supply and demand, which are imperfect. You don't know really how much that baseball really costs at that sports store. You don't know what the profit margin is. In the future, when you go shopping, your contact lens will scan all the products and tell you instantly who has the cheapest product, who has the best product. What does it really cost anyway to create that? The consumer has the advantage because the consumer will have infinite knowledge of what he or she is buying. So if you are the producer, how will you fight back? You'll fight back four ways. First, big data, one of the themes of this conference. We are going to be deluged in data, but we have to sift through it because out of the noise, we want to extract wisdom, things we can use, things that are useful out of this mass of raw data. And so we want to perfect data mining and big data. Second, targeted marketing. With this avalanche of data, you will know who is buying your products, why they are buying your products. Targeted marketing, and you're not going to waste money on things that don't go anywhere. Third, positioning. You have to position your product vis-a-vis all the other products that are competing with you, because competition will increase. This means more efficiency, cheaper prices, but more competition. And fourth, branding. Even more branding than before. In a hyper-connected age, how we connect with lizards, tigers, and animals will determine the fate of multi-billion-dollar industries. And of course, courtesy. Common courtesy, common politeness gives you a bond with the customer even in the digital age. And now, let me talk about an industry bigger than anything we've talked about so far. This industry is so big, it could break the bank. It is medicine. So let's now talk about medicine of the future. What will a hospital look like in the future? How will we digitalize this vast ocean of data? First of all instruments will be digitalized and immediately scanned on the web. For example, how small can you make a chip? We can make a chip so small now, we could put it inside an aspirin pill, along with a TV camera and a magnet. You swallow it. The magnet guides it down your throat, into your stomach, into your intestines. Because we all know what middle-aged men fear the most. Middle-aged men fear the C word, colonoscopy. That's when they put a tube up your rear. However, this gives new meaning for the expression Intel inside. Yes, in the future, Intel will always be inside. This is going to cut down on surgery, cut down on medical costs, colonoscopy simply by swallowing a pill. And nanotechnology, the other driver of innovation I mentioned at the beginning. We can now create nanoparticles, molecules that home in on individual cancer cells. Now today, if you have cancer, it's a horrible process. Chemotherapy means your hair falls out. You vomit all the time because you feel nauseous, premature aging of the skin. It's a horrible thing. But we scientists create molecules called nanoparticles that can home in on individual cancer cells. This is being done right outside Washington, D.C. at Bethesda, Maryland. And the next invention is even bigger than this. The next invention will render the word tumor obsolete from the English language. In the future, we will no longer say the word tumor because of the next slide giving you this marvelous invention, the smart toilet. In that toilet will be a chip. That chip is called a DNA chip, manufactured in Silicon Valley. It is so sensitive, it can pick up fragments of DNA from cancer, proteins from cancer, enzymes from cancer cells, and tell you if you have cancer 10 years before a tumor forms. You realize that if you feel a lump in your breast, it's too late. It really is too late. You have 10 billion cancer cells growing in your breast. Surgery is required immediately. No ifs, ands, or buts. Right to the operating room as soon as they find that. In the future, your toilet may pick up fragments of 100 cancer cells in a colony 10 years before a tumor forms. In the future, your toilet will tell you, watch out, you have breast cancer. Do something. You have 10 years. And also, realize that Steve Jobs, the genius behind Apple Computer, in some sense did not have to die. He died of pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer kills you in about 3 years. Very aggressive, fast-moving, unstoppable, says all the books. But we sequenced the genes for pancreatic cancer just a few months ago, and we were shocked at what we found. We found that everything we thought we knew about pancreatic cancer, which killed Steve Jobs, was wrong. Pancreatic cancer, we now know, is a slow-growing cancer. It takes about 20 years to kill you, but you don't feel anything for 17 years or so. You feel perfectly normal. And then in the last 3 years, the doctor says, unstoppable, incurable, kill you in 3 years. Just realize the word tumor could disappear from the English language. And then for you science fiction fans, we have something called the tricorder. The tricorder is this magical box. You simply wave it at people, and it tells you everything. What's inside your body, what's ailing you. We will have the tricorder. This is an MRI machine on the left. It is huge, gigantic. In fact, when I was in high school years ago, I was working at Varian Associates. My boss was Dr. Paul Ernst, an expert in magnets. Well, my boss went on to win the Nobel Prize in Physics for the creation that led to the MRI machine. Why is it so big? Because the magnetic field has to be uniform, that's why. But we now have computers. We can use computers to compensate for weak, irregular magnetic fields. On the right is the world's smallest MRI machine. It is the size of a briefcase. It's built in Germany. And the Germans were interviewed by Scientific American and asked the question, how small can you make an MRI machine? And the answer was, according to the laws of physics, the smallest MRI machine we can make is this big. you will have more power in your cell phone, more computer power than a modern university hospital today. We can put this technology in your bathroom mirror, a DNA chip in your bathroom mirror, and when you breathe in the bathroom, water droplets enter the chip. The chip analyzes for a broken p53 gene implicated in 50% of all common cancers. In other words, in the future, just by breathing, you will know if you have lung cancer in your bathroom. We will have more computer power right in your medicine cabinet than a modern university hospital today, including DNA sequencing. I had my gene sequenced. BBC Television took some of my blood, shipped it down to Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, and they gave me a CD-ROM with most of my genes on it. It cost $3 billion to sequence the first human. It was a government project. How much does it cost today to sequence a human? $1,000. Went down from $3 billion to $1,000. In the future, it'll cost $100. In fact, you could have it on your credit card in the future. And what will we do with it? We will grow new organs of the body as they wear out. This is an ear. It's made of biodegradable plastic. You seed it with cells from your own ear. They grow into the plastic, creating a perfect ear, which then dissolves because it's biodegradable. This is bone on the left. We can grow almost unlimited quantities of skin, bone, cartilage on the right, noses, ears on the right, blood vessels, heart valves, even full bladders. This is the world's first functioning bladder inserted into a young girl from cells extracted from her deformed bladder. We can now even grow heart valves. In fact, the world's first functioning heart valve was installed into a young girl just a few months ago. The next organ to be grown is the liver. So for all you alcoholics out there in the audience, drink up tonight, hoping that we will grow the next liver before your liver wears out. Now, what is the next big government project? Well, as I said before, GPS, the driverless car, the internet, all of them were government projects, including the Human Genome Project. What's going to be the next big government project? And it is the Brain Project. The Europeans are dumping €1 billion into working out the pathways of the human brain, and Obama has even pledged a few $100 million every year to get the Brain Project off the ground. For example, this is a brain on the left. On the very left is your brain when it tells the truth. Not much lights up when you tell the truth. However, the brain on the right is when you tell a lie. You see, when you tell a lie, first, you have to know the truth. Second, you have to create the lie. Third, you have to calculate the consistency of the lie with all the lies you've been telling all these years. That's a lot of brain power. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. And there's your brain on the right telling a lie. And we can now connect the brain to a computer. This gentleman here had a stroke. He is a vegetable. He cannot talk, write, walk. He is paralyzed inside his shell of a body. So scientists at Brown University put a chip in his brain, connected him to a computer. He can now move his wheelchair, read email, write email, type letters, play video games, work household appliances. Anything you can do on a computer, he can do as well. We're talking about who's pushing this technology? The military. The military has thousands of Iraqi and Afghanistani soldiers that came back from the battlefield, wounded warriors, and they're connecting their brains directly to mechanical arms, mechanical legs, and they will thrive once again. And here's my colleague, Stephen Hawking. He is totally paralyzed. He can only move his finger, but he recently lost control of his finger as well. So look at his glass, his right lens. Look at his right lens. There's a chip in his glass. We've now put a chip in his glass so he can communicate directly with a computer. So he now communicates by thinking and typing. This is going to be the future. When we walk into a room, we'll immediately control the computers around us. And now let me say a few things about the big question, the human lifespan. Why do we get old? Well, 10 years ago, we didn't really know. There were many theories as to why we get old. Now we think we know the answer. What is aging anyway? We now realize that aging is the buildup of error. Error, genetic error, cellular error, the buildup of error. But the body has error-correcting mechanisms, but eventually they too break down. If we can fix the error-correcting mechanisms, in principle, we might live forever. For example, why do some animals live forever? Believe it or not, some animals live so long, we've never measured their lifespan. We don't know how long they live, like the alligator and the crocodile. They just get bigger. They apparently live forever. Now, you may say to yourself, that's a bunch of nonsense. The internet says that alligators live to be the age of 70. But you see, that's when the zookeeper died. No one has ever seen an alligator or crocodile age, let alone die of old age. They simply get bigger. And in fact, whales, God knows how long whales live. Recently, there was a whale caught with a harpoon in its mouth. They extracted the harpoon, and they could date the harpoon. The harpoon dated back to the American Civil War. So the point is, maybe we don't have to die. Now, we are 98.5% genetically equivalent to a chimpanzee, but we live twice as long. We live twice as long, but we're genetically almost equivalent to a chimpanzee. We are sequencing those genes now. We will find very soon the genes which doubled our lifespan. And in the future, we may even have something resembling artificial intelligence. This is called surrogates or avatars. We can now control robots mentally, and this could be the future of the space program. One day, when we want moon bases on Mars and the moon, we may send robots. Robots controlled by the brain at home in your living room. So astronauts from their living room may be able to control an operating moon base on the moon, because most of the cost of the moon program is for life support. Robots do not need life support. The next industry to be sequenced is education. And the question is, this multi-billion-dollar industry, what's going to happen when we digitalize it? Well, first of all, this is going to be what your kids and grandkids will have. Your kids and grandkids will have an avatar. The avatar has a picture of your kid's face in it, and your kid will never play hooky in the future. Isn't the future wonderful? No more hooky. Because your kids will attend class via the avatar. The teacher will see his face or her face in the avatar. You will see the teacher's face from the computer screen, and you will never miss a day of class. Isn't the future great? Another thing is cyber education. Like I said, we're going to have robo-doc, robo-professor, robo-lawyer. However, there is a problem there. You see, the classrooms of the future, some of it will be in cyberspace, but the dropout rate from cyber education is about 90% in many cases. Many people sign up, and so maybe you have 100,000 people listening to one MIT professor, but then 90% drop out. Why? They don't have peer pressure, mentoring, career guidance. You have to have a social network, including the teacher, a mentor, and other students. So cyber education needs a lift, not just with computers, but with people. And true robots in the future? Well, let's talk about true robots. This is Asimo, the world's most advanced robot, built in Japan. Japan makes 30% of all robots, in fact. Asimo can run, walk, climb up stairs, and dance. In fact, he dances much better than me. We've been on many TV specials together, and he outdances me every time. So I went with BBC, and we interviewed the inventor of the world's smartest robot. And we asked him, how smart is the world's smartest robot? And the inventor was very honest. He said, the world's smartest robot, Asimo, his creation, has the intelligence of a cockroach. a stupid cockroach. A retarded, stupid, lobotomized cockroach. He's basically a tape recorder. He cannot have original thought, cannot have an original statement, cannot make a joke, cannot tell a story. He's like a tape recorder. We forget that robots are adding machines. Very sophisticated adding machines, but they're not creative. They don't have the ability to digest raw information and have intuition. So why is Japan spending so much money on robots? 30% of all robots built in Japan. Let me let you in on a secret. These are robot nurses, because Japan is a train wreck in slow motion. It has the world's fastest aging population. This year, the Japanese population shrank 0.03%, actually shrank this year. Plus, young people are not being born. Birth rate is about 1.2 children per family. And immigration is about 0. Europe is next. Europe also has immigration problems. Their birth rate is going down 1.4, 1.3 children per family, especially in Germany, Austria, Switzerland. Even Italy has a declining population rate, and it's a Catholic country, for God's sake. Europe is next. These are robot nurses to take care of an aging population. And that's why Japan is spending so much money on artificial intelligence. Let me now say a few things about jobs, and then let's get into the video. I have a video where we're going to go into the future. Let me just a few things. First of all, who's going to have jobs in the future, and who'll be unemployed? Well, to find out, buy my book. Now, let me tell you the answer. The jobs of the future will be jobs that robots cannot do. So, what cannot robots do? Robots can, first of all, do repetitive tasks. Therefore, automobile workers that do repetitive tasks, textile workers, they will be obsolete. Factories will be totally automated in the future. However, you realize that even though factory workers will be totally automated, work that is not repetitive will thrive. Gardeners, construction workers, sanitation workers, policemen will thrive because every construction site is different, every crime is different, every garbage is different. Middlemen are the big losers among the middle class. Middlemen, they are the friction of capitalism. Middlemen will lose jobs because, well, they do inventory, they do bean counting. For example, today I bought my plane ticket, and some agents did not get a job. Also, stockbrokers. You realize that you buy stocks today, not through a stockbroker. So how does a stockbroker make a living? Very important. Stockbrokers no longer sell stock. What do stockbrokers sell? They sell what robots cannot provide. Intellectual capital. That is, experience, talent, creativity, information, leadership. These are human qualities that cannot be duplicated by an adding machine. And so the jobs of the future will be things like construction workers, sanitation workers, because those jobs are non-repetitive, rock and roll stars, and scientists, and anyone involved in the mind. Tony Blair likes to say that England derives more revenue from rock and roll than it does the coal mining industry. In fact, commodity capital has been dropping in price. It fluctuates, of course. But in the main, commodity capital like food has been dropping in price. Tonight, you had dinner that the King of England could not have had 100 years ago. Think of what you just had for dinner. Delicacies from around the world that the King of England could not have had 100 years ago. But intellectual capital, that's going to be the currency of the future. The brain cannot be mass-produced. And so before we go to the video, let me conclude that the future has losers and winners. You are among the winners. You are involved with intellectual capital, analysis, creativity, experience, leadership. These are qualities that adding machines cannot provide. So congratulations. So you can imagine the amount of big data that will be required to analyze this flow of data in the future. Now let me end on the following note. When I was a child, I had a childhood hero. My role model was Albert Einstein. And my favorite Einstein story is this. When Einstein was an old man, he was tired of giving the same talk over and over again. So one day his chauffeur came up to him, and the chauffeur said, "Professor, I'm really a part-time actor. I've heard your speech so many times I've memorized it. So why don't we switch places? I will put on a mustache, I will put on a wig, I will be the great Einstein, and you can take a rest and be my chauffeur." Well, Einstein loved the joke, so they switched places. This went along famously until one day, a mathematician in the back asked a very difficult question. And Einstein thought, oh, the game is up. But then the chauffeur said, "That question is so elementary that even my chauffeur here can answer it for you." Thank you very much. You've been a great audience. And that is a preview of the future, as told to me by 300 of the world's top scientists. And I think we have time maybe just for a few questions, just a few questions. There's a microphone in the audience. So here's your chance to talk back to the lecturer. We have time for just a few questions.
If no one else has one or while they're working on one, I'd like to ask you, since you're talking the future 2020, what can we expect in changes in our political system that will avoid events of earlier this month?
Well, there's one thing that cannot be quantified, and that's human stupidity. Sometimes people ask me, well, is there intelligent life in the universe? The first question is there intelligent life on the Earth? And then I think the answer to that is probably no, just like it was happening in Washington. So there are certain things that cannot be predicted by computers, unfortunately, and that's why periodically we get into this bind of not paying our bills. Next question.
Back here. So I'm curious about, you made a statement about post-silicon 2020 and the quantum computing. So I'm curious why you think quantum computing is going to develop differently from fusion energy, both of which have shown glimpses of success, require huge leaps in capability, and yet haven't borne out the ability to scale.
Okay, first of all, Moore's law and the prosperity in this very meeting depends upon Moore's law. Moore's law cannot last forever. It will eventually come to a close in about 10, 15 years. Your Pentium chip today has a layer about 20 atoms across. In about 10 years' time, it'll be about 5 atoms across. At that point, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle kicks in. You don't know where the electron is. It leaks out, and silicon short circuits. So there's two problems with Moore's law. Heat. These transistors will be so hot you can fry an egg on them. And second of all, leakage. Now, to go beyond that, we have no technology today that's ready for prime time. We've looked at atomic computers, DNA computers, protein computers, optical computers, quantum dot computers, quantum computers, molecular computers. None of them are ready to replace silicon at the present time. Silicon Valley could become a rust belt in 10 to 15 years. I mean, at Christmas time, would you buy a new computer knowing that it's the same power as last year's model? You're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar industry that could go out the window in 10 to 15 years. But we hope that one of these technologies will come to fruition. My personal bet is molecular computers. We can make a computer the size of a molecule. The problem is we can't wire it up. Because, of course, it's the size of a molecule. How do you wire up molecules? That's a technical problem, but it's going to be a big problem, and there could be a new Silicon Valley erupting someplace on the planet Earth, and the center of IT technology could shift away from the Bay Area. We don't know. Now, fusion power is still a big question mark. The French are bidding the store on the ITER fusion reactor to go operational in 2020. So watch for it. In 2020, we may have the world's first operating fusion reactor. Commercialization in 10 years. So in 2030, there could be a wild card, and that is fusion, which uses seawater. Seawater as the basic fuel for fusion reactors. But again, we don't know because we don't have an operating fusion reactor yet. These are two big question marks for the future. Yeah, who has the next question?
Here.
Okay.
All right. So you talked about the 80-year cycles, and the first cycle was the steam engine, that was the energy, and the second cycle was, again, electricity, energy. The third one, obviously, you talked about the computers, but don't you think the fourth cycle can also be the energy that can, again, lead to the bubble and the crash again?
We're not sure. All we know is that roughly every 80 years, the market crashes, which means that in 2090, tell your grandkids to sell their stock before 2090 when the next big one collapses. It's all hocus pocus. Nobody knows for sure. But energy, yeah, if fusion power kicks in, it could be the driving force of the fourth wave. We don't know for sure. Right now, as you know, because of fracking, we're literally rolling in natural gas. The United States overtook Russia, in fact, in that category, and will rival Saudi Arabia. So it's a big question mark. Also, solar power and renewables, they're more expensive than fossil fuels, but they'll go down slowly. Maybe in 10 years' time, they could become competitive. And so the energy mix today is going to be quite different in the next 10 years because of the supply of shale, fossil fuels, the possibility of fusion, and the declining costs of solar hydrogen.
Steve.
Yeah?
Hi there. Thank you for the speech, and it was really enlightening at best. The question is, where do you see, you have a very unique perspective in terms of looking globally where the innovation is happening, and some of it you talk about. Where do you think United States stands in terms of some of the innovation that's happening, and where are some of the best things happening around the world?
Well, fortunately, the United States is still the leader in much of these technologies, but slowly we're losing that leadership. For example, because of the wisdom of the United States Congress, they canceled the Super Collider, which was to be built outside Dallas, Texas, and now the Vatican of Physics is Switzerland. The European Union now has the leadership in quantum physics because Congress canceled our machine. Congress gave us, in the 90s, $1 billion to dig the hole for the Super Collider. Then they got cold feet and canceled the Super Collider and gave us a second $1 billion to fill up the hole. $2 billion for a hole to dig it and to fill it up, okay? So we're losing the edge in high energy physics. Second, we're losing the edge in fusion power. It's going to the French. We closed down the Princeton laboratory, and so the French will probably get the first operating fusion reactor. Biotechnology, because of the restriction on stem cell research, biotechnology is going to Europe and also Asia. And the space program. Who would have thought that after competing with the Russians, we have to hitchhike on Russian booster rockets, okay? So we're giving a space program basically to the Chinese. In 2025, put that down in your calendar, the Chinese have stated that they will publicly put a Chinese flag on the moon. That's going to cause a heart attack in the United States, another Sputnik moment, okay? And we're going to be caught totally unprepared because we're no longer leading in space travel. Of course, it's a gamble going to the private sector. I should be fair, okay? So, but my fear is that one by one, we're giving up leadership in areas that we once totally dominated, and now we no longer dominate in those fields. And as you know, just last month, the latest OECD figures came out. Once again, American students came out near dead last among all the industrialized nations in the quality of math skills and reasoning skills. That is unsustainable. And then the question is, well, why does America still have Nobel Prize winners and Silicon Valley, right? Because America, with the worst educational system known to science, we have a secret weapon. Maybe you've heard of it. We have a secret weapon that keeps our scientific establishment going, and that is H-1B. But there are some forces that want to cut back on H-1B. Just realize that 50% of all PhD physicists in the United States are foreign-born. 50% of Silicon Valley is foreign-born. At my university, City University of New York, 100% of the students in PhD physics are foreign-born. It is unsustainable. Anyway, I got the word that I have to wrap up.
We have one more question.
Okay, one last question, and then we got to wrap it up.
Recently in June, there was a conference in New York City, the 2045 Foundation. It was led by Dmitry Koskov, I believe his last name was, Russian billionaire, with the idea of fully animated avatars with brain mapping by the year 2045. Do you have a comment on, what 100 scientists are working on this?
Well, realize that because artificial intelligence is going much slower than we thought, the Moore's law for artificial intelligence has been a lot slower because a lot of it, well, let me back up. We made a mistake 50 years ago, thinking that the brain is a digital computer. That was a huge mistake 50 years ago. The human brain has no Pentium chip. There's no Windows. There's no operating system. There are no subroutines. There's no programming. The brain doesn't have any of the things that we associate with a digital computer or a Turing machine. The brain is different. The brain is a neural network. It's a learning machine. Your laptop today is just as stupid as it was yesterday. Your laptop never learns anything. It makes the same stupid mistake because it's an adding machine. We forget that. So some people want to go to avatars instead. If the human brain is too difficult to emulate because it's 100 billion neurons, each neuron connected to 10,000 other neurons in a neural network that rewires itself every time it learns something, maybe instead we can use avatars to control robots. You saw Asimo. Asimo is now hooked up to a human who can now control some of the movements of Asimo. But just to show you how primitive it is, the Pentagon analyzed robots at Fukushima. We have this raging nuclear meltdown, 3 nuclear meltdowns simultaneously at Fukushima, and robots are totally useless in Fukushima. The robots that go in are cameras on treads, basically. These robots cannot turn a screw, they cannot turn a valve, they cannot make repairs, they're totally useless. So the Pentagon is now dumping millions of dollars on its next project, the mechanical worker that can fix damaged nuclear power plants. So an avatar, however, would have a human guiding its motions like a drone and would be much more advanced. But even there, a lot of work has to be done. So the Fukushima disaster very clearly shows the glaring deficiencies that we have to bridge in order to create intelligent workers that can make simple repairs on a damaged nuclear power plant. Okay, well, they tell me that time is up, so thank you so much. You've been a great audience. Okay.